Do you know what hurts more than words? The silence. Especially the silence of someone who no longer begs, no longer pleads, no longer explains. The silence of someone who once gave everything and was ignored, mistreated, and underestimated in return. This silence has an echo that resonates in the hearts of those who believed you would always be there. And it is precisely in the moment you decide to go quiet, to withdraw, and to stop justifying yourself, that you hurt the person who never knew how to appreciate you the most. Because silence hurts differently. It doesn't shout, it doesn't accuse, it doesn't plead. But it says everything. I assure you that those who believed you were weak, easy to take advantage of, or replaceable, will begin to hear this silence when it is already too late. Your silence is the result of everything you swallowed, everything you endured, everything you forgave in the name of a love that was never given back to you. It is the voice of your dignity, which one day grew tired of having to explain itself. And I promise you that the one who never knew how to appreciate you will feel this emptiness, this absence like an abyss, because silence leaves everyone alone with their own conscience. There are no more excuses there, no screams to cover up the guilt, no dramas to hide behind. All that remains is the weight of one's own mistake. Do you know why silence is so powerful? Because it speaks of your decision to stop fighting, to stop begging for crumbs, to stop justifying behaviors you should never have tolerated. Your silence makes it clear that you are no longer available to be used as a shoulder to cry on, as an occasional refuge, as a lifeline for someone who only showed up when it suited them. And that hurts. It hurts deeply, because they suddenly have to face the reality of losing you. Not because you didn't love them, but because they couldn't give you what you deserved. Carl Jung explains that a person who does not integrate their shadow projects their emotional garbage onto others. This leads them to dump guilt, frustration, and shortcomings onto whoever is always ready to endure everything. And sometimes, without even realizing it, you become the recipient of everything the other person cannot process. You have to be the emotional support, the therapist, the savior, until one day you wake up and decide to go silent. This silence is not cowardice, not indifference. It is the purest expression of your healing. Because those who heal no longer argue, no longer plead, no longer cry, no longer beg. They simply walk away. And it is precisely then that your silence begins to bore into their soul. They wonder why you no longer respond, why you no longer demand anything, why you no longer appear when they need you. And that emptiness weighs heavier than any argument. Because silence cannot be manipulated, it cannot be twisted, reversed, or used as leverage. Silence becomes a brutal mirror that forces them to confront their own mistakes. I assure you that the person who never knew how to appreciate you will remember every word you once said to them. But above all, they will remember the moment you stopped saying those words. Because when someone has grown accustomed to you always being there, to you always picking up the phone, to you responding to their dramas, it hits them like a devastating blow when they realize you are no longer available. And there is no harsher punishment for an immature ego than having no one to blame, no one to dump anger or frustration on. Your silence breaks his comfort zone. I want you to engrave something into your mind. Your silence is your loudest cry of dignity. Because not everything can be resolved through words. There are things that only heal when you withdraw. There are people who only appreciate your presence once they feel your absence. And that is not revenge, it is consequence. The consequence of not having listened, of not having seen you, of not having respected you, even though you were there for them, 100%. Jung said, "What is not made conscious, one experiences as fate." And this person will sooner or later have to encounter the fate of their own emptiness. I know it hurts to stay silent. I know that you would often prefer to scream out everything you have felt, all the rage you carry within you, all the times your heart was broken. But believe me, when you are silent, not out of fear, but out of self-love, something magical happens. You reclaim your strength, you reclaim your peace, you reclaim your center. Silence, chosen wisely, is medicine. It is the necessary distance to heal your wound. without them being able to poke at it again with dirty hands. And while you heal in the silence, they begin to live through their own inner hell. Why? Because silence takes away excuses. Without screams, without accusations, without blame, the only voice they hear is the voice of their own conscience. And no one endures that so easily. The conscience is the most merciless judge. And when you are no longer there to justify their mistakes, when you are no longer there to give second chances, they are forced to live with their own guilt. I want you to remember this. Every time you doubt whether you did the right thing by staying silent, it is not your job to raise someone who does not want to learn. It is not your job to heal someone who does not want to be healed. It is not your job to save someone who does not want to be saved. Your only task is to protect yourself, to prioritize yourself, to take care of yourself. And sometimes the best way to do that is to quietly withdraw and let the other person bear the consequences of their own selfishness. This person, who never knew how to appreciate you, will perhaps try to provoke you, to get a reaction out of you. They will send messages full of excuses or accuse you of being cold and heartless. Do not fall for this game. Your silence is your most powerful statement that you will no longer accept anything less than you deserve. And if you give in to the manipulation, they will creep back into your head, manipulate you again, and diminish your dignity once more. Remember, whoever truly loves you does not force you to retreat into silence. Whoever truly cares for you does not push your patience to its limits. Whoever truly values you does not drive you to withdraw. So, if you are silent today, if you are keeping your distance today, then do not be ashamed. You are doing the right thing. You are giving that person the only real chance to wake up by losing you. And not everyone knows how to handle loss. There are people who think you will always be there. That is why your silence hurts so much, because for the first time, they understand that you are not unconditionally present, that you will not endure everything forever. For the first time, they discover that you too can leave, that you too can close the door, that you too can put yourself first. And that, believe me, leaves marks, far deeper than any scream. Carl Jung said that the unconscious sometimes responds only to a deep blow, to something that breaks the mental routine and forces a person to look inward. Your silence is exactly that blow, the fracture that shakes the other's sleeping ego, the earthquake that forces them to confront their own shadow. And although it is painful to witness, it is the best thing that can happen to them. Because no one changes as long as someone else is keeping their self-deception alive. So today, I want to invite you to be proud of your silence. It is not weakness, it is not indifference. It is strength. It is the courage to let go of what no longer serves you. It is the maturity to understand that not everything can be fixed through words, that not everything deserves your voice, that not everything deserves your energy, that there are people who will only learn once they no longer have access to you. In the next part, we will explore even deeper how to maintain your silence without guilt, how to resist provocations, and how to transform that silence into the most powerful tool of self-love. Because this is not about punishing anyone, it is about healing, about closing cycles with dignity, about choosing yourself, even if that means leaving a void in the hearts of those who never knew how to care for you. Don't miss what's coming, because we will take this reflection to an even deeper level. This is only just beginning. Silence has a power we often underestimate. It is not merely the absence of words. It is a boundary. It is a space. It is an act of self-care. When you choose to go silent towards someone who never knew how to appreciate you, you are sending the clearest and firmest message you can give. I am no longer available in the same way as always. This silence is like a wall that protects your peace of mind, that says enough without violence, that marks an ending without scandal. People are not used to losing your voice. They are so certain that you will always respond, explain, and justify yourself, that your decision to say nothing breaks their power game. They feel disarmed, vulnerable, even desperate, because the silence gives them no material to keep arguing, no material to keep twisting their lies, to keep manipulating your empathy. There is no argument against silence. There is no counter-argument against emptiness. Those who never knew how to appreciate you begin to feel your absence with an intensity they had not expected. They begin to remember everything you gave, everything you carried, everything you brought, and it causes them pain, even if they will never admit it. Because the ego prefers to pretend indifference, but in the end, the conscience always speaks in screams when there is nothing left to distract it.
That's why your silence cuts so deep, because it forces them to listen to themselves. At first, it can feel uncomfortable for you too. You are so used to talking, explaining, trying to save the relationship, that holding back your words feels like a betrayal of your own nature. But I want you to remember this. Not everyone deserves explanations. Not everyone deserves your voice. You have given so much, repeated yourself so many times. If, after all of that, they still don't value you, there is nothing left to say. Whoever didn't listen when you were screaming won't listen now either. Your silence, when maintained well, is more powerful than any words you could speak. She is the proof that you no longer need to convince anyone of your worth. That is self-love in its purest form. Carl Jung said that when you stop projecting, you begin to heal. And silence interrupts the projection. It gives you back to yourself. It lets you see where your energy has been bound and invites you to reclaim it for yourself. That is where your true liberation begins. You will notice that when you go silent, the other person does everything to provoke you. They will seek contact, send messages, touch your weak points, try to make you feel guilty. Because they cannot bear the emptiness, because your silence creates too much noise within them, because they no longer have control. That is exactly where you must stand firm. Do not respond from a place of pain. Do not respond from a place of nostalgia. Every word you give back to them is a door that opens, allowing them to repeat the same harm. I promise you, if you resist that first impulse to break the silence, you will feel a peace that you may not have felt in years. Because it is the peace of someone who no longer betrays themselves, who no longer begs, who no longer submits. The silence becomes your refuge, your sacred space, where no one can reach you anymore. And that is not pride, not revenge. It is self-care. It is healing from a distance. I know that the thought can hurt, that you might be forgotten, that the silence could mean losing them forever. But I want you to look at the reality. Someone who truly loved you would never have silenced you. Someone who truly respected you would never have pushed you to your limits. So, if they leave forever, it is because they did not have the capacity to appreciate who you are. And that is not a loss, that is a relief, because you were not born to be someone else's solution. You were born to share yourself with someone who values you unconditionally. While you are silent, you will discover things about yourself that you never saw before. You will notice how often you gave in out of fear, how often you spoke just to calm the other person down, how often you tried to maintain what was impossible to sustain. This learning is pure gold, because it gives you back your power. It gives you back the certainty that you do not have to sacrifice your inner voice to maintain a relationship that never gave you peace. And although it seems incredible, your silence will bring about deep changes in the person who never knew how to appreciate you. In the beginning, there will be anger, excuses, denial. But over time, when they can no longer blame you, they will begin to examine their own mistakes. Maybe they will not change. Maybe they will not ask for your forgiveness. But the seed of awareness will already have been planted, and that is enough to close the cycle with dignity. And Jung said that consciousness hurts. Your silence is the shortest path for that person to come into contact with their own awareness, without distractions, without your explanations, without your justifications, only the pure reality of their own emptiness. This process is healing, even if it does not look that way, because no one changes from within their comfort zone. People only change when the pain becomes unbearable. I want you to have the strength to maintain your silence, even when it hurts, even when you are blamed, even when you are labeled as heartless. You know you are not heartless. You are healing, you are setting boundaries, you are showing that person without words that whoever does not take care of you loses you, and that lesson will remain engraved in their memory forever.
And in the meantime, I want you to make yourself a promise not to use your silence as revenge. Use it as medicine, not to punish, but to protect yourself, to close wounds, to rebuild your self-love, to hear yourself again without interference. Because only in this way will you be able to connect again from a healthy, clean place, free from bitterness and free from emotional chains.
In the next part, we will go deeper into something essential: how to build your self-worth while staying silent, how to avoid falling into the self-deception of returning when you already know there is no love there, and how to transform this silence into a new beginning rather than stagnation. Because you deserve to move forward with your head held high, knowing that you did not stay where you were not respected. Do not miss what is coming, because it will be even deeper and more liberating. We will name emotions that you may have never dared to look directly in the face. This is only just beginning, and together we will emerge stronger from it. Being in silence does not mean being empty. On the contrary, your silence is full of meaning, full of everything you have not said, full of everything you no longer wish to repeat. And when you learn to dwell in that silence with serenity, you become someone untouchable. Because nothing hurts more than seeing that the person who used to beg no longer pleads, no longer asks, no longer insists. This serenity disarms every manipulation strategy and shatters it into 1,000 pieces. Because while you are at peace, the other person writhes in their own chaos. Whoever did not know how to appreciate you will sooner or later feel the weight of this calm, stable, steady silence. A silence that expects nothing more, that does not chase, that does not seek. It is the silence of someone who has chosen themselves. And that is the greatest blow to the ego of someone who had grown accustomed to your total availability. You will see that many people will try to provoke you, to break your composure. They will want you to lose your balance, to explode, to scream, to react. Because that gives them back the security that you still belong to them, that they can still control your emotions. But when your silence comes from a place of calm, from the certainty that there is nothing left to give, no scream can pull you away from that. And that is admirable. That is power. I want you to take this to heart. Composure is not resignation. It is not giving up. It is the greatest expression of acceptance. It means understanding that you did everything you could, that you loved as well as you knew how to love, that you gave the best of yourself and still were not seen. It is hard, I know. It is hard to look at the space that opens up when you step back. It is hard to sleep in the silence when you used to spend your nights trying to fix everything. But in that space, in that silence, in that stillness, the possibility of rebuilding yourself arises, of finding yourself again, of returning to who you truly are. Because when there are no more screams, when there are no more excuses, when there are no more empty words, the deepest truth emerges. You deserve peace. And I assure you, once you cultivate that peace within yourself, nothing and no one can ever take it from you again. Those who did not know how to appreciate you will feel a terrible emptiness, and you will feel an immense relief. And not because you are heartless, but because you have finally stopped sacrificing yourself, because you have finally understood that whoever does not value your presence does not deserve your words. While you maintain this silence, I want you to focus on strengthening your sense of self-worth. Think about everything you are worth, about everything you brought to the table, about every small gesture of love you gave that was never returned in the same way. Not to see yourself as a victim, but so that you remember that your effort was authentic, that your love was real, that your intentions were pure. That holds immense value, and whoever did not know how to receive it simply was not on your level. Stay in the silence, yes, but also rebuild yourself. Take care of yourself. Heal the wounds that hurt so deeply. Nurture your body, your mind, your soul. Seek out activities that connect you with yourself. Learn to be alone without feeling lonely. Read, meditate, walk, breathe. Turn your silence into a sacred space, not a dark hole. You will see how your energy gradually changes. You will see how you stop depending on the validation of others, how you begin to treasure your own moments of quiet as the greatest protection for your peace. And when you reach that point, when you hold yourself firmly in your serenity, no one can shake you anymore.
No one can play with your emotions anymore, because there are no more open doors for manipulation. It is likely that if you maintain this kind of silence, memories, ghosts, and nostalgia will surface. That is normal. Every time we distance ourselves from someone who meant so much to us, the brain sabotages us with memories of the good times. But do not forget the reason why you came here. Do not forget the tears, the contempt, the disrespect. Do not romanticize the person who hurt you. Your silence is the boundary between your broken past and your peaceful future. Do not cross it. There will be days when you think about sending a message, explaining yourself one more time, demanding a final sense of closure. And I want you to remember, that person will not give you true closure. True closure comes from yourself, when you decide not to go back, when you choose to prioritize yourself, when you choose peace over chaos. That is where the story truly ends. That is where you truly heal. Carl Jung said that what we do not resolve within ourselves, we repeat in the outside world. If you do not heal your fear of being alone, you will go back and seek out the person who never knew how to appreciate you. That is why your silence must be accompanied by a promise. To work on yourself, to look at your wounds, to forgive yourself for holding on for so long, to understand that you deserve more. Only then will you break the pattern. Today I want to invite you to use this silence as a door to a new chapter. A chapter in which you no longer settle for half-hearted love stories, in which you tolerate no disrespect, in which you do not beg for attention. A chapter in which you are master of your peace, guardian of your calm, protector of your heart. Whoever failed to appreciate you will feel your absence, will hear the echo of your silent voice, will ask themselves 1,000 times what they did wrong. And that is the best lesson. Not to hurt them, but so that perhaps one day they will wake up. And if they do not wake up, it is not your problem. You have already fulfilled your role. You have already given your best. You have already tried everything. Now it is time to think of yourself. Maintain your silence. Speak to yourself. Listen to your thoughts. Embrace your emotions. And when your soul trembles with nostalgia, remember this. No one who truly values you would silence you. No one who truly loves you would make you feel so small that silence becomes your only protection. What comes after this process is beautiful, even if you cannot see it yet. The rebuilding comes, the healing comes, a new version of you comes, stronger, freer, more aware. A version that will no longer give away its voice to someone who does not deserve it. In the next part, we will dive even deeper into how to use this period of silence to grow, to start fresh, to rise with more strength than ever before. Don't miss what comes next, because it will be a guide to turning your pain into an unstoppable force. And remember, investing in yourself is always worth it. Let's keep going. There is a moment when silence becomes your only refuge, a space where there is no more noise, no more screaming, no more excuses, just you and your conscience. It can be frightening, because silence also forces you to look at yourself without a filter, to see your wounds, to face your own shadows. But this moment is sacred, because that is where true rebuilding begins. When you no longer have to explain to anyone why you left, when you no longer want to convince anyone that you deserved to be loved, when you no longer beg to be understood, you reclaim an immense power, the power to be with yourself, the power to be enough for yourself, without depending on anyone else's validation. That is the true treasure that emerges from silence, when you manage to sustain it with serenity. The one who failed to appreciate you will feel this silence like an abyss. He will look at himself in the mirror and face everything that your presence once softened. Because your company was his comfort, your voice was his refuge, your patience was his sedative. And when all of that disappears, nothing remains but the weight of his own emptiness. And that, even if he will never admit it, is unbearable for many. There is nothing more uncomfortable for someone who refuses to take responsibility for their mistakes than having to live with them, with no distractions to hide behind. Your silence forces them to look directly into the loneliness they have created. It forces them to recognize that they have lost someone who truly loved them. And even if they try to cover it up, even if they call you cold, even if they try to redirect the blame, Deep down, they know they will not win you back this time. That is precisely when your silence takes the form of a lesson. Because it is not a punishment, it is a consequence of not listening, of not caring, of not appreciating. And these consequences are the hardest, because they do not come from anger or revenge, but from your self-love, your dignity, your right to peace. And no one can challenge them, because they hold no argument. They simply exist, firm, relentless, like a wall you will never tear down again. Over time, this silence within you changes. At first it can be grey, full of pain, memories, nostalgia. But as more days pass, it becomes clearer, cleaner, and more healing. You begin to feel relief, to regain your energy, to hear your own inner voice again. That voice which had been buried beneath so many arguments, so many justifications, so many desperate attempts to save what could not be saved. That is the gift of your silence. It gives you back the ability to hear yourself, to feel yourself, to prioritize yourself. Because in the absence of unnecessary words, your true connection with yourself begins to bloom. And that is where you start to rebuild, slowly but firmly. You remember again who you were before you gave so much away, and you recognize your own worth once more, without depending on anyone else's gaze. In the meantime, the other person continues to struggle with the echo of your absence. They will remember your gestures, your attentiveness, your words, everything they once ignored, undervalued, or took for granted. And every memory will be like a dagger, because they will know that you will not do it again. That certainty is devastating for someone who thought you would always be available. It is not about taking pleasure in their suffering. It is not about wishing them pain. It is about accepting that only through loss can someone truly understand who you were and how much you gave. For while you were there, their mind did not appreciate it. Only when you leave does their heart awaken. And even though it may sound cruel, sometimes life works this way. The silence, when it arises from self-love, teaches more than any accusation, because it cannot be manipulated, cannot be fought, cannot be ignored. It remains there, firm, constant, day after day, as a reminder that this time there is no going back. And even if they come and seek you out, even if they want to make contact again, even if they want to reopen conversations, you are no longer the same person. For the silence has transformed you, because you are no longer the one who begged for explanations, who forgave quickly, who endured indifference. Now you are someone who respects themselves, who honors themselves, who takes care of themselves. This change is irreversible. Maybe you still feel nostalgia. Maybe there are days when remembering hurts. But you would not return to that same place. You would not betray your dignity again, because you have already learned the most important lesson. Your peace is non-negotiable. Carl Jung said that a person can only find themselves when they are able to be alone, in the silence, without masks, without distorting mirrors, without outside voices. That is where the truth emerges. That is where you discover what you truly need, what you truly deserve, and above all, what you are no longer willing to tolerate. When you manage to maintain that space, your life changes. You begin to attract different people, healthier situations, more authentic relationships, because your vibration rises and you no longer fit into the same pain as before. And that is magical, even if it seems frightening at first. Your silence is like a filter. It keeps away those who do not want to grow and opens the doors for those who can truly love you with respect, awareness, and reciprocity. That is why you should not fear it. You should embrace it, dwell within it, make it your ally. For it is only in silence that true transformation blooms. There will be people who say that silence is coldness, pride, cowardice. Do not listen to those voices. They speak from their own wounds, not from truth. The silence that is born from your dignity does not destroy, it heals. It does not hurt, it protects. It does not punish, it teaches. And those who truly love you will one day understand that when you came to be silent, it was because you had already screamed too much, had already asked for too much, had already given everything and still had not been seen. That is the clearest language of the soul. When your silence is held with love, not with hate, You will see that it is not so heavy, that it does not pull you under, that it does not hurt you. On the contrary, it becomes light, almost liberating, because you no longer carry words on your lips that were never heard. You no longer exhaust yourself trying to convince others. You no longer tear yourself apart, begging for love. You have become someone who knows when to step back, who understands that love should not hurt, that company should not wear you down, that attention should not have to be begged for. And right there, right in that place, you truly begin to heal.
In the next part, we will take the final step: how to permanently transform this silence into a new way of living, how to use it to open the doors to the most authentic self-love, and how to build a future without repeating old patterns. This does not end here. I assure you, what follows will be the greatest revelation of this journey. When everything grows quiet and the echo of your words no longer exists, the true test begins. There, your silence becomes a new way of living, not merely a temporary strategy. Because you have learned that you can no longer give your voice away to someone who does not want to listen, that you can no longer share your energy with someone who does not know how to nurture it. And in that moment, you recognize that you have been reborn. This being reborn hurts because it means saying goodbye to many things, to people, to illusions, to shared dreams, even to the image you had built of someone in your own mind. It hurts to let go, it hurts to accept, it hurts to close the door. But the pain of an ending is far healthier than the endless suffering of remaining somewhere you were never truly valued. Gradually, this silence stops being an emergency refuge and becomes your natural space. You learn to inhabit it without fear, without the need to seek validation, without waiting for answers that may never come. Right there is where true self-love blossoms, because you are no longer dependent on anything external to feel at peace. And as you walk this new path, you begin to notice the signs you once ignored. You notice who is willing to share with you without hurting you. You notice who values your essence, your devotion, your light. You become more selective, more conscious, more careful, because you have learned through blood and tears that not everyone deserves your closeness. And that is a lesson one never forgets. The one who failed to appreciate you will continue to feel your absence. Perhaps they will try to contact you. Perhaps they will want to justify everything that happened. Perhaps they want to rewrite the story so they don't have to live with the guilt. And that is precisely where you must stand firm. Because if you open the door again without any real change having taken place, you will only repeat the same cycle. And this time, there is no excuse for deceiving yourself. You already know how this story ends. The silence at the end is not only the consequence of an unrequited love, it is the starting point of a deeper love, the love of yourself. Because respect is not requested, it is built. And when you decide to respect yourself, to protect yourself, the universe responds. New paths open up, new people arrive, healthier experiences, because you are vibrating from a place of dignity, not from a place of lack. Carl Jung said that everything we do not integrate into consciousness returns to us, disguised as fate. That is why silence is so powerful, because it breaks the cycle, because it forces you to see what you have silenced for years, to recognize your fears, your wounds, your attachments. And once you see them, you can no longer ignore them. This truth, even when it hurts, sets you free. In this freedom there is loneliness, yes, but it is a different kind of loneliness. Not the loneliness that hurts, it is the loneliness that heals. Because finally, you are no longer surrounded by the wrong people. Finally, you are no longer sharing your life with someone who cannot hold it. Finally, you are no longer begging for love. And in this loneliness, you rebuild yourself, reinvent yourself, grow stronger. A day will come when you look back and feel grateful for this silence, for every tear, for every sleepless night, for every thought that led you to make the decision to choose peace. Because without this break, you would still be bound today. Today, you would still be living half a life, waiting for something that would never come. It is likely that ghosts, memories, and waves of nostalgia will still surface, because what has touched the heart so deeply does not disappear from one day to the next. But now you have a shield, your dignity.
Every time you think about going back, about giving in, about explaining yourself one more time, you will remember all the harm, all the exhaustion, all the emptiness. And that memory will be enough to carry you. There are people who say that silence destroys. I believe silence heals, because it destroys everything false, everything forced, everything manipulated, and leaves only what is true. And sometimes the truth hurts, but real pain is better than a happiness built on lies. Your silence today is a clearer message than 1,000 words. It says, I choose myself. It says, I no longer negotiate my dignity. It says, I have learned the lesson. And even if there are people who may not understand that, even if you are judged, even if you are labeled as cold, it does not matter. Because at the end of the day, only you know what it cost you to get here. Never forget, no one who truly loves you would make you go silent in order to protect themselves. No one who genuinely values you would push you to set such hard boundaries. If you have arrived at silence, it is because there was no other way out. And that is the truth the other person must accept, even if it hurts them. From now on, make your silence a healthy way of life. Not to remove yourself from the world, but to nurture your inner world. Not to punish others, but to protect yourself. To never betray yourself again. To never lose your voice again in a place where no one listens. If you speak again one day, let it be with someone who can truly listen to you, who respects your story, who values your wounds, who deserves your love. Because you were not born to beg for attention, you were born to share yourself in abundance with someone who can truly hold you. This silence will remain in the heart of the one who did not know how to appreciate you. It will stay like a scar, reminding him that someone once loved him unconditionally and that he lost that through his own blindness. You, on the other hand, will leave lighter, stronger, wiser, because you understood that self-love also expresses itself through a farewell. And when you love again, because you will love again, you will do so from a higher place, with less fear, with more awareness, with the certainty that you will never again allow anyone to silence you, to erase you, to make you feel unworthy. So this journey ends, not with screaming, not with accusations, but with the deepest peace one can only reach when one decides to go silent in order to protect one's own heart. Because sometimes silence is not an absence, it is a presence, the presence of one's own love, one's own dignity, one's own courage. This is the beginning of a new chapter. And even if it seems dark to you right now, trust in this. Very soon, you will discover that this silence was the bridge to your freedom. And that, believe me, is worth more than any word.